Hello there, folks. We're going to break with our usual tradition a little bit tonight. So a slightly different clip we're going to bring for you because on Friday, after we'd recorded the show, we had the big federal court decision. The judgment was handed down in the case of Tickle versus Giggle for Girls Proprietary Limited. Really important and serious case for Australia because basically Justice Robert Bromwich of the federal court ruled that sex is changeable and non-binary. So that's very significant, a very big ruling in the Australian Federal Court, that's for sure. So Justice Bromwich held that Roxanne Tickle was discriminated against when she was refused access to a social media app described as being an app that was made for women. And the court ordered Giggle for Girls Proprietary Limited and its CEO and founder, Sall Grover, to fork out $10,000 in compensation to pay Roxanne Tickle's legal costs. And the court found that Ms. Tickle, who identifies as a trans woman, was excluded from the app based on her appearance and that was discrimination on the grounds of her gender identity. Now, this case went to court because Roxanne Tickle took a complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission in 2021 and they didn't reach conciliation. Giggle for Girls and Sall Grover did not back down. They stood their ground. And so it had to go to court, had to go to the federal court. And it was therefore the first case alleging in Australia gender identity discrimination to be heard in the federal court. And the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, the Australian Human Rights Commission's Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Dr. Anna Cody, was just overjoyed. She issued a statement saying, "We are very pleased that this case has recognised that every individual, regardless of their gender identity, deserves equal and fair treatment under the law." And she said the 2013 changes to the Sex Discrimination Act make it clear that it's unlawful under federal law to discriminate against a person based on their gender identity. Now, let's just unpack that for a second because there are a lot of people saying that there are some issues with this ruling and it could actually be wrong in law even. It basically hangs on changes that were made to the Sex Discrimination Act in 2013. And those changes, as the Sex Discrimination Commissioner just said, makes it clear that it's unlawful for federal law to discriminate against a person based on their gender identity. Now, that 2013 change came after a case in 2011 where a man was trying to join an all-women's gym class and he was told that he couldn't. In 2011, it's very clear, okay, that prohibits, you prohibited a man, you can have an all-women's gym class and it isn't sex discrimination and not let men come into an all-women's gym class. So it's a pretty big ruling that this one says that you can have an all-women's app and only let women on the app, but you can't discriminate against a trans woman. Okay, so the Human Rights Commission that we all pay our tax dollars to maintain that commission, and the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Dr. Anna Cody, whose wage is paid by you, the taxpayers, this commission has decided, no, gender is changeable and non-binary. Then, of course, the Giggle for Girls company had to take it to court, and they went to court, and the judge said, yes, indeed, gender is non-binary and sex is changeable. Now, this is probably going to be appealed. The appeal will go to the full federal court or to the high court, okay, one or the other. Back in 2023, last year, I sat down with Sall Grover, the founder of the Giggle for Girls app, and spoke to her after Roxanne Tickle had made this claim in the Human Rights Commission. So Sal gives a very comprehensive explanation, and I thought it would be a really good time for us to revisit that and replay that and bring that interview to you once again. So here it is. Sall Grover, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sal, you're the founder and CEO of Giggle, well, you were. Tell us a little bit about what that app was designed to do and why you started it.
So we started it because my mum and I just had an idea one day of doing a female-only roommate app. I had just moved back from America. And when I was there, I'd moved to New York and I had to find a room to rent. And I just got, there's messages like, oh, you can live here rent-free if you walk around naked, or like, or like, do you want a boyfriend as well? And I was just like, can I just find somewhere to live without this kind of nonsense? And so we were just like, oh, like a woman-only, roommate app, so you can just find have a house full of women, which is what I'd ended up being in, and it was so great. And then as we were developing it, we were like, oh, well, we may as well add some other features, whether it's like freelance work or like just connecting just to chat and, make friends or travel, things like that.
Great idea.
So it was just this little, supposed to be just this little app that women could use where there'd only be women there.
And unlike most people who come up with an app idea, which is everybody, you actually did the hard part, which is getting it up and running.
Yeah.
Which is an enormous amount of work, right?
Yeah,
it must have taken ages.
Yeah, it was about, before it was even on the App Store or Google Play, it was about 18 months from idea to completion, which is relatively quick, but we just sort of jumped straight into it, designing it, finding developers, doing the family and friend investor round, which is always the first ever round that you do with a startup. You're just establishing the business. And at no point in this process did anyone say to us, or did we think, should we just check if men are legally women? What an irrational thought. I had no idea that there was any issue with this stuff. I don't know what bubble I was living in.
Private internet access is terrific. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network that blocks spying eyes in government or marketing from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical, even I could do it. And the other side has secured a special deal for our viewers, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal, and help support us by supporting our sponsors. PIAVPN.com. PIAVPN.com/other side. That's the important bit. /other side to get the special deal. So that's PIAVPN.com/other side. And even if you've already got a VPN, consider switching to these guys. Since I have, I've had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And now I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I'm on. So it's really great. PIAVPN.com/other side. Right.
I think I was very much in basically that Trump hating bubble. And I still really hate him as a human being. I don't like him as a person. But I was just in that and consumed with that, and that was how my news was filtered online, and so that the algorithm of where I lived in, and so because of that, I didn't see anything else that was happening. And
you were in New York at that stage?
No, I was back here. I was back here, but I was just still following. Well, I was just even on Twitter, I was following U.S. politics still, and just what was happening in the world, and thinking. But it was very much in that post-Me Too world as well, where I was and just him as just this sort of grotty person, I would say. I'm just not a fan. But I just missed it all. And then so basically, we developed the app. We put it on the App Store and Google Play, and we were doing what's called beta testing, just to check that things worked. So a handful of women around the world knew about it, and all of our security measures weren't in place. So to keep an app female only, you basically how would you do that? We found that there was a company that did it's not facial recognition software, they call it gender, but it's actually sex, because they're just using the polite term for sex in that sense, which is what gender sometimes has been used for, but we'll get to that later. But it was just this software that could tell from a picture whether someone's male or female. And when we discovered that, it was like, oh, well, this is possible to do. And we thought long and hard about it, because I was like, well, that's the least controversial way to do it. Because when we're just walking around in everyday life, you just go, oh, that's a man, that's a woman. It's so subconscious. This is such a basic skill that we have. And we take selfies all the time. And we all just know that who's a man and who's a woman. And I was like, easy. And it would work, and it would keep it woman only.
Can I just ask you, sorry, it's a bit of a sidebar, but that's interesting. So you can, so they have facial recognition, can actually identify a man from a woman, which means that there are biological features that express on the face that are different, or dimensions or proportions on the face. That
anyone watching this right now can tell you're a man and I'm a woman. We don't have to announce it. Like, it's just obvious. Men and women look different. And
there's a way of, but I'm saying there's a way.
There is a way. So in terms of how,
it into a recognition.
In terms of like how a software would work, there's two different ways. So there is the sort of biological way. Now, male and female skeletons are different. Like, so how our faces are different. Archaeologists know this. Like, when they find, dig up like skeletons from the past, they can tell from like a leg bone if it's male or female. Like, we're just different. Like, yeah.
So this was obviously very upsetting to the people who would like to think that they can change their biological sex or gender, whatever they call it.
So it's important to understand, and I'll get to that, of what all these differences are. But so basically, on the 7th of February 2020, I woke up that morning to thousands of men on the app, because we didn't have that security properly in place yet, because we were still doing all the testing. So they were on there, they'd created these profiles saying kill TERFs and rape threats, and I didn't know what a TERF was.
Okay, so these weren't men trying to get into a women's app to chat up women. These
there was no women on it yet at this point.
Okay, so it was still in beta mode. So these were actually
they're just men. I mean, they're just men. I couldn't tell you if they were
trans or not.
I couldn't tell you if they were men who think they're women, or they were just men, because they were just men from any perspective that you could look at it. And they'd inundated the App Store and Google Play with 1-star reviews, calling us transphobic. And I was devastated and mortified, because I'd never been called phobic of anything. I'd never been called a bigot before in my life. I've never done anything to warrant it. I was like, I'm a supporter of gay marriage, which is a sex-based thing, biological sex-based, like sexual orientation. So I was just like, what is going on? So I started researching it very, very quickly, because we had to work out as a company how we were going to handle this. And I've just found that all of these women who were speaking up weren't telling a word of a lie, basically. And these were a lot of the women at the time who were being very vocal. They were British women. So you've got like Helen Joyce, Julie Bindel, Kathleen Stock, and then Kelly J. Keane. They were
Posey Parker, who we banned from Australia, or tried to ban. Because we can't have any free speech here. We don't do free speech in this country.
Women who I've now had just the pleasure of becoming friends with, because through all of this, and we've been able to sort of create this global network of women who are fighting back against it. And then, so basically, I just sat there for 6 months. We were just treading water with the app, just trying to be quiet. And I was like, I'm just going to learn and listen and find out what's going on. And then J.K. Rowling properly entered the sort of the public sphere with it and wrote her essay. And that was part of what made me go, okay, I can start speaking now. And I just was like, I'm going to come out and...
So when was that, Sal? What year was that?
That was 2020. So that was July 2020 was when I started speaking up publicly. Publicly about it. And just because there were women who didn't know where we were as a company, because basically all women are now just used to all companies and institutions just going like, no, so you don't matter. We'll side with the men who claim they're women. And I was like, I'm just not going to do that, because for me, like, as the founder and CEO of the company, like, you had to sit there and make a decision about the company, but also like just where you are, like, as a human being, like as a person, like morally and philosophically, everything. And I was like, I'm not going to deny reality for anyone. And I'm also just, as a business owner, there is no point to this business if I let men on, because it's like, well, congratulations, I've invented Twitter. It already exists. There's already places that are unisex. It was our unique point was that it's women only. So I was like, I just have to take a stance. It's the only thing I can do. It's the only thing I want to do.
Well, it's why you invented it, right? It was set up to be a women's only space. And I'm actually one who supports the idea of spaces for genders to hang out together, or sexes to hang out together, because you need a little time away, and we do have things in common that are different, I believe.
I completely agree.
And men's groups can be really supportive and valuable for men. It's really a good thing to do. I completely agree.
I think there should be more places for men to just go and hang out and like have a chat. Like the men's sheds, for example, have been so successful. But there needs to be more like just places to relax. There is actually a male-only barber shop in South Australia at the moment who is applying to have an exemption, because they are male only. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because, and their whole thing is, we are a place where men can come and relax, you know, have a haircut, shave, all of that sort of stuff, and talk about, I don't even know what men talk about. Yeah, whatever it is.
Well, like, we only respect these things if they're indigenous or they've got some other woke intersectionality, like, you know, secret women's business, secret men's business. If it's Aboriginal, then it's okay. But no, you can't have a, you know, I mean, even men's clubs, I now sort of get the idea of why old clubs like the Brisbane Club or the Queensland Club, maybe they shouldn't call themselves that, they should call themselves the Brisbane Men's Club or the Queensland Men's Club. But I can understand why you'd want to have a space for men to get together or for women to get together and have a women's club and a women's gym. What do women's gyms do? I mean...
Totally. Like, just for, like, recreation and just connection, it makes total sense. Like, I understand why women dismantled a lot of male-only spaces in the past that were, like, government and boardrooms.
Or influential, which, like,
that needed to change so that women could be there just as a society, how we all are. But as you were saying, like, we all coexist in society. We all hang out. We're all fine. It's totally normal to just want to go and have, like, a little refuge away just with your people. And there are like 50 trans apps on the App Store and Google Play. Like, so this is a demographic that also wants to go and just hang out with their kind, and
people.
Totally fine.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah.
So okay, so where are we? You got the you got the app. You're still in beta mode. You've been swamped by these already.
Yeah.
Before this, so it's like, what was it about the app that made people go, oh, or made the activists on the trans side say, oh, we need to do something about this? Was it something that stood out?
It was the onboarding security. It was the AI, because
having to face the reality that is biological. Then
yes, because the trans activist position is that anybody, like, you know, basically there's no such thing as biological sex. So it's just your sex assigned at birth. It's meaningless. What is the most meaningful thing is your gender identity, this innate feeling that you have. And that can be anything, whether it's male or female, non-binary. Then they have, you know, this 700 other ones.
When did we all agree and vote on this?
We didn't.
Oh,
we did not.
Because I thought I must have missed it.
No, we didn't.
I must have been asleep.
Yeah, no,
because
and
I
that's
didn't
the
know.
thing.
Because when I'm a Christian, and I thought there were God made two genders for a reason, and that sometimes we need to be kind about them. Sometimes there are aberrations. But even if I wasn't a Christian, I'd still say let's respect nature, right? What happened to, you know, looking at the universe and yin and yang, and you know, shouldn't there be these two energy forces?
So my boyfriend actually is Christian as well, and so when sometimes he's saying it back to me, he'll say it in the same way, like, God did this. So now I'm not religious at all, and I say to him so we have two people with different views there, and we coexist perfectly, because I'm just like, you can believe whatever you want. But my thing with that is, you don't even need that to fight against it. We are just talking about basic reality here, and however that might come through to you, it is just, there's male and female.
It's in every religion on earth, every philosophy on earth,
it's just happening every day.
We just somehow just went, oh, it's not there anymore, it's not a thing anymore. But what it confuses me is, how does that, it's like we're saying, you know, nobody voted on this, right? It's a cultural infiltration, and it's a campaign, right? Have you seen up close and ugly how actually organised this is?
Yeah. So in a democratic society, you know, really big things do go to a vote. Whether, like, I mean, gay marriage, whatever you think about it, it went to a plebiscite. Democracy in action. The Voice, whatever your position on it is, it's going to a referendum. We all get to at least go and vote on it. There's been nothing. There's no mandate for this whatsoever. This is activist infiltration, basically going into institutions and from academia, because I think what happens is basically these people who in academia, they get taught that, you know, there's no such thing as biological sex. You can choose what you are. Men and women are the same thing biologically, but your identity is what separates you, and basically inventing all these new categories. They graduate and then they go into all the institutions. And so that's how it sort of spread.
They can't work in the free market. They couldn't survive. They go into the public service bureaucracy, they go into the ABC, or they stay in academia. Right? Where their bizarre worldview can be propped up by a kind of world that just defies reality, and we're really seeing it up right close. I mean, it's bad enough with Marxism.
And how they've done it is no debate, basically. They basically did it all in stealth, because the moment there is a debate and that people know what's going on, no one agrees with it because it is so preposterous. You feel like you're saying conspiracy theory nonsense to people, and you're like, no, this is actually happening. Because when you're trying to say to people, they are wiping out biological sex in law and saying it doesn't exist and that men can be women, people would be like, that can't possibly be happening, because you're like, this is just such a basic fact. Like, you're like,
this whole show's based on the whole idea of, looking at the world and going, what?
Like,
what happened?
It's so
you
crazy.
got the Prime Minister saying that, that the Uluru Statement of the Heart is one page. It's like, but there's actually a physical document, and even if it's not 26 pages, the section in the document is a few pages, like at least 10 or something. Yeah. And it's like there's an apple on the table. It's not an apple, it's an orange.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, are we having a discussion in reality?
And that's why, like, Giggle as a company really just so blindly entered this space head on, is because we had put in technology, AI technology on the app that basically confirmed that you can tell if someone is male or female, and not only human eyes can, but also this technology can. We had it set to 94% accuracy because with our testing that we were eventually doing, we found that was the best way. That maybe occasionally it would let a male on, but we could remove the male, but it meant that women didn't get denied. There was just enough of just enough space there. It was just the accuracy that we found. So it wasn't that then no men ever got on again. It was just that we would then remove them.
Yeah.
And that's what they mainly. That is what the problem is, because they don't actually have a problem with women-only spaces. They just want men to be included in them. Right.
Okay.
But in terms of the concept, you're allowed to have your women-only space.
But who are they?
Like, it's trans activists.
Yeah. But are they organised under a particular organisation in Australia? Is there a name? Is there a Google site? Is there a website?
The Green Party is basically one of the big ones in Australia who is pushing it. Yeah, I mean, and it's actually quite crazy because...
Hang on, the Greens are an environmental party. They just care about trees.
No, but that's what's so crazy is that you've got this political party that is all like clean living and like the environment, but then with human beings, it's pumped them full of these synthetic hormones, and so it just doesn't even make sense. But the Greens is the political party in Australia that is the most captured by this ideology. And then because just how coalition governments form, so then they will have a lot of power over the Labor government, basically.
Yeah, of course.
And that's basically how it has happened. Yeah. So it is very much...
Well, the ACT government, for example, is a coalition government of Labor and Greens, and it's by far our finest performing government in the country at the moment. It's just doing so well. Right. So anyway, coming back to your story. So this has happened.
Yeah.
You're launching this thing. It's like $700,000 of friends and families, seed capital investment. Are you freaking out? Like, what's your next step? What did you do?
I just feel like I've had so many heart attacks in the last 3 years.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, no. It became clear to me that the best course of action that I could have was to go onto Twitter and to speak out about it, because no media would speak to me. Like I was contacting everybody, like. Before we had launched and there'd been any attacks on us, say Mamma Mia, who brands itself as Australia's largest or leading women's media platform, whatever, they were like all over us. They were like, this is fantastic. Like, this is Mia Freedman herself. This is a fantastic idea. This is just a slam dunk for our audience. Anything we can do to help. And I was like, great. I was like thinking this is going to be
huge,
really cool to launch this. Like the relationships that we can form. The moment we got accused of transphobia, no one. The project wouldn't contact me back again. They were going to have me on. Mamma Mia has never ever responded to an email. News.com.au won't. I mean, Samantha Maiden has blocked me on Twitter. Lots of them have, actually. Yeah, they went silent. No media would speak to me.
So you've had the full cancel culture experience.
The full cancel culture. And
welcome to the land of the classical liberal and semi-conservatives and conservatives. And
the one journalist who would speak to me was Bernard Lane, who at the time was at the Australian, and I mean he was just struggling because he'd become aware of what was happening with childhood transition, and he was trying to get a story out there, but it never got published. It wouldn't. So I was like, the only course of action I have is to go onto Twitter. That's cesspool. And start speaking myself and trying to say where I stand on this and join the women who are fighting against it. And at the time, I honestly thought, I was like, because what we were saying was such basic fact, I was like, this will be over in like a few months.
This will be fine.
Yeah, I was like, because everyone will hear it and go, oh, of course, like this is, men aren't women. What's everyone doing? No, I mean, it's 3.5 years later and I'm still doing it. And it's only now that Australia is really starting to wake up to there's an issue happening. And so us Australian women, like Kath Deves is one who she's on my legal team now, and we talk every day, and we're like, we are so weathered from this. We've been through 3.5 years in, and we've got to try and be all shiny and new again to introduce the people who are just waking up to it. But
I'm sort of at that point where it's like you just get so used to it, and you think, is this ever going to change? But people are catching up. People are waking up. I mean, I think lots and lots of people are just realising it's not normal. And I think as Australia moves into the next phase, where they're going to feel the pain that was delayed from all the horrible COVID management and all the infringements of our rights and shutting of businesses, and that inflation starts really. I mean, people are hurting now, but it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So I think there's going to be a lot of people rethinking a whole mindset, I think, that we all got caught up in. I mean, I'm as guilty of it as anyone. I'm a lot older than you, but I went through the 80s as a strident leftist journalist. I mean, my idea of doing good research was to go, is it does it support some social cause? And if so, they're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And that was it.
I think that's such a great point, though, because no one is immune from falling for absolute nonsense. We all have at some point in our lives. And so people who have at the moment, if you're just normal everyday people who are just hearing like, oh, believing what they're being told, which is there's this oppressed minority over here, that the most marginalized in the world. A lot of people, they support the LGB. They've heard that the T is on there now, and they're like, well, I support this, so of course, if you're telling me this is the new thing, I will support that too. And that's one of the horrible things about this ideology, is it attacks your empathy. And so when you've got to sit there and unpack that and what they've used really and weaponized against you, it's so devastating. And because I still am a supporter of all of this, but I'm just going after this one particular thing because it's not true, it's dangerous, it's literally destroying people's lives, and there's nothing good.
What we're doing to children in particular, I can't fathom it. I mean, it's just beyond me. Yeah. It really is probably the greatest indication of how sick our society probably has become. Yeah. But the other thing that happens that people don't realise is, it's kind of like, I mean, most of my friends were journos, and they were, people I'd grown up with and gone to uni with in the 80s, and they're all pretty left-leaning and gone. They don't talk to you, they don't want to associate with you anymore, they won't enter debate. I had a rule at one point when I first started to come out as slightly less left-wing, that I just would, if somebody wanted to attack my arguments, if an old friend attacked my arguments online, no problem, fantastic. But as soon as they attacked my character as an old friend, I thought, that's it, I'm cancelling you, right? You want to cancel us? I'm cancelling you. Well, that's unacceptable. You know me, you should know that I'm a good person. If I change my political views, I've got reasons for it. You should want to know and understand that, not attack and just dismiss. So it's so funny. The first friends to cut me off, it was geographically based. It was everyone in Melbourne. You always lose your Melbourne friends first when you go. When you start shifting to the right a little bit. My best friend from we met when we were 11, and he messaged me one day and said, you've something to the effect. It was like, I hope you haven't become this bad person that you seem to be. And I was like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? And I got him to say it was off this issue, and I was like, a bad person? I'm just saying men aren't women. I'm not a bad person. I was like, unless you're going to acknowledge. There was also kind of all that Trump hysteria too, right? So we're all like, oh God, Trump's become the president. So everything bad went into this Trump bucket. I always call it the Trump blob in the brain, right? And everything sticks to that. And if it's a Trump thing, it can't be, because that's about the depth of people's thinking of issues sometimes. But it's one of the things that's really annoying, and how divided we all are in this left and right. Like, I don't care about left and right at this point. I'm like, is something a good idea, and is it true? Fantastic. That I'll go with it. Yeah. But because, say, like with Trump, like as I said, I don't like this guy as a person. But then, is he the guy that if he was to get back in, he's on my side with this? On a lot of other stuff, where we are against each other. But then you're in a position, say, if for women. And there's a lot of women who are becoming single issue voters on women's rights because, say, in America, you've got on one side the abortion, and then on the other side, women's sex-based rights to spaces in sport, and just us existing as in law as an actual identifiable sex class separate from men.
So you've got women in America have to vote. Which one are they voting for? Because they should all be just in one place. We shouldn't even be debating this stuff anymore, but we are anyway. So the worst thing that could happen is that if you divide, women's rights or anyone's just human rights like this, so if you vote for one party, you're going to be losing rights over here. If you vote for that party, you're going to be losing these other rights. This is not sustainable. This is not equality in any way, shape or form.
Private internet access is terrific. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network that blocks spying eyes in government or marketing from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical, even I could do it. And the other side has secured a special deal for our viewers, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal, and help support us by supporting our sponsors. PIAVPN.com. PIAVPN.com/other side. That's the important bit. /other side to get the special deal. So that's PIAVPN.com/other side. And even if you've already got a VPN, consider switching to these guys. Since I've had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And now I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I'm on. So it's really great. PIAVPN.com/other side. Yeah.
In Australia, we're fortunate at the moment, say like abortion is not sort of a ticket on anything at the moment. It's not up for debate. So it's this part of women's rights. But is there a political party in Australia that's even really talking about it, like from our side? There's a few. You've got Claire Chandler, who's a Liberal senator in Tasmania, Alex Antic in South Australia. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no political party that's on our side here.
There's no political party.
It's Pauline Hanson is one as well.
Look, we've dissected this a lot on this show about why there's no political party, and we just reran our original first episode with Campbell Newman. Mm-hmm. And we talked about what liberalism is and what the party used to stand for and what Menzies was all about and all that sort of thing. And the party, it has commercial realities. It's marketing, right? And they've got to kind of win that middle in you've got to be a 50+1 party. And when I think public opinion's like that, it's a U-curve now, not a normal distribution. And so you've got these two polarised ends. I think they're making a mistake in not sort of securing the base and winning the middle. They're trying to win the middle and then secure the base, and it doesn't work like that anymore.
Well, I also think, so obviously I come at this issue, this sex versus gender issue, from women's rights and for female-only spaces. Like that's sort of my expertise in it. But I actually think if when you're talking about it, this issue on a political level, this is actually an issue that affects everyone. It's not a women's rights issue. We're the canary in the coal mine. It affects everyone because it is freedom of belief, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. Yes. These are the three most basic human rights that have been,
And we can disagree on all sorts of things. All sorts of abortion, men's rights, whatever. You and I probably would have a lot of disagreement. Yeah. But I want that freedom to disagree. I want to have the discussion. Exactly. I want the freedom to be able to change my mind too, by the way.
Exactly.
I don't want to be locked into it or labelled something that I can't change.
Totally, because there's things that are opinion-based and then there's things that are fact-based. So when you're talking about fact-based things, that's when you're saying males and female. That's just fact. There's no opinion there. Other stuff, opinion. And so that's when you can go like, I prefer this political party because it aligns with my opinions. But when it's just fact, you cannot make that something that one political party is for and one is against. This is just fact. It's supposed to exist beyond that. And so when you're getting into an era where actual facts are being lied about,
well, look, now people might be now thinking, you're overstating it, Sal, but let's just get into the detail a little bit. So the act that we mentioned earlier, the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, which is the one that this comes under, and because it's brought by the Human Rights Commission, it's also related to the Human Rights Commission Act, which set the commission up in 1986. But that Sex Discrimination Act, which first came in 1984, was modified in 2013 under the Gillard government, and there was a bit of a debate about that at the time as well. But just explain that modification. Okay,
so in 2013, the Gillard government introduced gender identity into the Sex Discrimination Act. So this is a great time to explain what these all are. So as I keep saying, biological sex is male or female.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have, so from that, you've got girl, boy, and man, woman. Now, these are still sex-based terms because girl, for example, is just a child, adult, female, and boy is a child, adult, male. And then the male and man and woman ones are the adult versions of those that what we mature into. So the only way for anyone to become a woman is to be born a girl and to grow up. Basically, that's it. There's no other way to be a woman. These are all sex-based terms. Then you've got gender. So gender has sometimes been used as a polite synonym for sex, because like on forms and things like that, you know, instead of saying sex, male or female, they would put gender. Especially in America, it was a big synonym for that. But I would say here too, that's what I always knew it as. It was just another word for sex. It has to be so distinctly established that it's different now. That it is what is being done is so different. So gender identity is supposed to be, and what it's defined as in law, is it's this innate feeling that is expressed through mannerisms and behavior, surgery and hormones, that you are a man or a woman, even if that's not what you were born as. You know, you weren't born as the girl or boy.
So when you said you have to make that distinction,
yeah,
you weren't being metaphoric.
No.
You have to make that distinction. It's in the law of this country. Is that right?
Yes.
So what is the? So that's the terminology you've used there in defining that. Is that the actual?
Yeah. So that's what the gender identity is in law. Now, gender, if you
just repeat it for me, Sal. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's the expression or feeling. It's a felt.
It's a man-made concept. It is because there's no evidence that this exists, this feeling, because you can just claim it. I mean, you could just go and claim that you have a feeling that you're a woman, that is a completely subjective feeling to you, and then you would express that in behavior and mannerisms in a way that what your interpretation of how a woman behaves. So then we get into...
So that's Australian law.
That's Australian law.
Now,
so to explain it a bit more, so you've got obviously these biological sex things. It's just male, female, man, woman. That's just biological sex. But gender, especially how feminists, and this is like feminist theory in academia, they sort of were using gender as a way to explain like masculine and feminine, what's expected of both of the sexes. So that was sort of the layer, and it is there out in society. Like whether it's men are supposed to be, you know, tough and not cry, and women are supposed to, you know, wear makeup and you know.
So the social conditioning roles that we've accepted as male and female.
Yeah, and then there's some things that are still, I wouldn't even call them that because they're just. Again, they're in the biology, which is like men are physically stronger, and only women can have babies. So that's just still in our sex biology realm. Okay. But then you've also got superficial stereotypes. So like, you know, only women wear dresses and skirts.
And want to play with dolls, and boys want to play with things, and girls want to play with people. Now look, I have to also say that there is research, neuroscience research now and psychology research that suggests that is biological too, and that would horrify the trans people because that's like, oh my God. But it's true. Like you put kids in a room in a thing and you give them dolls, and the girls will go to the dolls and the boys will go to the things.
I have a 1-year-old daughter. And she plays, you know, those little kid like kitchens. So my mum she started playing with one anyway. So we've ended up getting her one because she loves playing with this little kitchen. And I don't cook. This is not learned behavior. She's not emulating me, but she just loves to play around in this little kitchen that is marketed for girls. So this is not taught. So she also does
play with... It's not socially constructed.
She plays with little toy cars as well. She plays with anything. Like she's one.
All right, but let's give them that one. So we'll say, okay, all right, it's socially constructed, that part of gender.
But there are, like, you know, in terms of, like, there's some cultures in the world right now where men do wear, like, dress tunic type things. Like, so you're going into lots of different things. It's just messy, like...
They're still damn masculine, though. That's the thing, right? They're not...
Totally, but it's
not a dress as far as they're concerned.
And so it's like, basically... If you were wanting to be like, have like actual progress in a society of like, okay, what is better here? There's an argument, and I actually am for it, of going like these superficial gender things where like of the toys and the clothes and makeup and stuff, anyone can do it, whatever. If you're a guy who likes to wear makeup, be a guy who likes to wear makeup, like really, because it doesn't affect anyone else, it doesn't matter. And if that became normal, who really cares? So a lot of people think that that's kind of what's just happening because that sounds progressive and nice.
Yeah,
and you're like, cool.
Fine.
That's not what's happening at all. they're saying that if you're a man who likes to wear dresses and makeup, that means you are a woman. And so then laws have been put in place where you can then go and change your sex marker on your birth certificate, which, apparently sex and gender are different, all of this, transgenderism, but they are changing their sex marker on their birth certificate to say they're female because, they like to wear dresses and wear makeup, and they have this innate feeling. They don't have to prove it to anyone. It's just, this is what self-ID is. You can just literally go and be like, I think you need a letter that says, who can't get a letter, that says, yes, this person is innately a woman. So it's just a letter stating nonsense. And then that man can go into any female space, go and play in women's sports, and society has to accept that this male person is a female person. They'll have to call him she. And so that's the free speech gone. It's your freedom of belief. You can't then acknowledge what you see with your own eyes. Excuse me, because
this is what I think you're right. People don't understand the implications of this. It's not about it's not a trans issue.
No.
It's government telling us what we are allowed to believe, what we are allowed to think, and not only what we are allowed to not say, but as Jordan Peterson often says, enforce speech. What we must say. I must acknowledge your pronouns. I must accept that you're a woman, even though I don't.
You now have headlines.
Well, no, sorry.
You now have headlines about the rapist, and they'll refer to her penis because this rapist now claims to be a woman, and you're going, this is like George Orwell didn't go this far.
No, and he predicted it, right?
Yeah,
everything in 1984 he talks about that inverted speak, peace is war, war is peace. But
but he didn't go as far. He didn't go, they do this with biological sex.
How perceptive though to even see what he saw, right? In 1948, to write a book like that.
I mean, I was born in 1984, so it just sort of feels so fitting. But so basically, you can. So you're a regular person just living your life, whether you're just going to work, maybe you own your own business, you've got kids in school, whatever it is. And so now in society, you have to see men as women or women as men, less so there, but it is mainly men as women who are enforcing all of this, and change your speech. Now, if you don't, the punishment for that, there's legal consequences. In Queensland, for example, they're bringing in the hate speech laws, which will mean that you have committed a hate speech crime if you have misgendered somebody. So I fully expect police to arrive at my door at some point, because I will not call a man a woman under any circumstances.
We're seeing the police enforcing a lot of these sorts of speech, social media crimes and things in the UK.
Yes, so that's being imported here.
It's quite horrific, and it's happening. It's going to start happening.
It's going to start happening here. Yeah. So these.
It's not funny, is it? It's
no,
really
it's
serious.
not. Because I'm quite a free speech absolutist. Like, I would actually prefer people to be able to say horrible things.
Oh, totally.
Because I like the choice to turn it off. And I also like to be able to know who are the people, what are the horrible things being said and who's saying them, so that you can know what is happening in society. Like, you need to know. I don't want to ban any speech, even if I really, really am against it. Because if you ban any speech, how do you know what you're against then? I don't want anyone else to decide what I can and cannot hear. And that's essentially, when you're talking about free speech, you actually have to, it's not so much about speech, it's the freedom to listen. And so I want the freedom to listen to whoever I want to listen to.
Well, you have to have that, because if you lose that, you're gone. Because if the propaganda is all on one side, we're finished. Because the left know how to use propaganda. I mean, first of all, they label everything, which is one thing I admire about Trump. He's one of the few people on the right that actually knows that branding, marketing, labeling thing is so powerful. So he labels everything. But the word TERF, I mean, the thing you got accused of being, trans exclusionary radical feminist. So you're excluding trans, right?
Yeah.
From what? Like, I mean, what were they included in the first one? And then the radical part. It's like, oh, you're a radical feminist.
Yeah, so that's what's so funny about it, is that I'm not trans exclusionary, I'm male exclusionary, and I'm not a radical feminist. So, but this is the thing, they can call me whatever they want, and I've got to just wear that title, and I'm treated as that now, like, these people won't speak to me, you're bad, you're a bigot, because you've been labeled that. But if I just correctly say that man is a man, I can't do that. So there's no equality here. at all.
No. Now, I started this show by saying it's not coming, it's here.
Yes.
So you have experienced an enormous amount of things that have happened. You mentioned earlier the cancellation by Mamma Mia, right? I mean, it's pretty woke, but you'd think they'd be enlightened enough not to cancel someone who started Giggle, but anyway. And then you've got cancellation by, what does that do? What did that do to the investment, to the business, to everything?
Oh my God, we've just tread water basically for 3.5 years. It has been a terrifying time. You just basically, you go from a business perspective, you just sort of very skeleton, you make everything as economical as possible. So
you've been completely ostracized.
Completely ostracized. But we knew, I'm like, I believe in the company. I'm like, I know this, we can get there. We just have to weather the storm. And so, and fight against it, like help end it. But I was like, okay, we just have to just keep it going and just keep it there. And we'll work, we'll try and, but still trying to push through. Yeah. But just having
But you had to close the site, right?
We ended up closing it last year, but that was more of a position of when you are cancelled for 3 years and so you're not making money with it or anything, we had to do updates and everything.
Right.
And so it was actually just because we're trying to do it as economically as possible, we couldn't do all of the updates while having it on there, like say a platform like Twitter can. We had to just take it down and then we'll just relaunch it, which is that's all fine. It's all cool. It's for the better, playing a long game here. That's fine. But yeah, it's been stressful. And like doing a startup is hard for anyone. No one's owed success in a startup. You have to work. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
There's a very good chance it's not going to work.
But like, so it's hard. We just had this extra layer because of suddenly people were saying men or women.
Yeah, but this drives me crazy because, our governments are put in place to try to promote business. They say they justify all this government spending saying we're going to have a Department of Business Development, we're going to support small business, we're going to support medium enterprise, we're going to support startups, we want to have a tech industry, blah, 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 blah. And then they overlay red tape, green tape, woke tape, and you just, or rainbow tape, whatever they call it, and you just totally cannot move. And then someone like you, who's had the initiative to get up and actually, as I said earlier, turn an idea into something real, take all those risks, gather all that friend and family capital, get that first seed money going, get into it, start doing it, and then the lawyers come in. The people who've never produced a damn thing in their lives for anyone come in and just make life hell for you.
Well,
I mean, I know there are good lawyers out there that do a lot of good work for a lot of people. Sorry, I'll just clarify that.
I'm working with lawyers a lot at the moment. We'll get to that.
But you know what I mean. It's not like they're behind, the government's going, go, we've got to protect you and help you drive this.
There are like government grants and incentives out there that are like for women startups. Like women-led startups and everything. Okay, I'm not eligible for any of them because I would have to include men as women. Yeah, so I can't go into any of those. I can't have government help because I'd have to agree to their absurdity, and I refuse to do it.
Only government can bring you this kind of lunacy, folks.
Yeah. Like so, there's so many things at the moment. You'll see it's like it'll be some initiative for women, and then it'll be like just at the bottom. It's for anyone who identifies, including anyone who identifies as a woman. So you're like, oh, so it's for men too. It's not for women. What's the point of having these little initiatives where it is to try and get more women into tech or into STEM or something, when men can just identify into it?
This is one of my pet peeves about why we must teach liberalism in schools. We don't teach kids the philosophy of classical liberalism. Or liberalism is just what it's our system, and we should be teaching it, right? They know more about socialism and Marxism when they come out of university than they do about liberalism or classical liberalism.
They should be thinking. I'm all for like whatever political ideologies that suit you and you prefer or whatever. But what needs to be taught is critical thinking, because if you're just accepting like different ideas where you haven't thought through them critically, then what are you actually
but the Marxists have got that covered, you see, because they call every one of their theories a critical theory. And they were criticising, we're becoming woke to the oppression, which is Marxist.
Yeah,
so
critical theory and critical theory and critical thinking are two very different things.
Yes. Yeah. So what I was going to say about liberalism, though, is one of the philosophies of liberalism that people forget is that there's the free market operates with this invisible hand, and things work out because people work through things. So when government doesn't meddle, it's good. But something bad will happen, and then everyone will go, oh, the government ought to do something. And then the government thinks, okay, well, we need to legislate, right? you turn on the ABC, it's like the government ought to do something. And so the government's like, oh my God, we've got to do something, even the Liberal Party. Then they go do something, and then this principle that we have in liberalism and in economics of unintended consequences. The fact that one of the reasons the free market works, the invisible hand works, is that no human sitting at the top of a government or organisation can go, I can see all the unintended consequences that could occur from this law that I'm going to introduce. They go introduce a well-meaning law, and they don't see all of these implications, and you just wind up with these ridiculous absurdities like you're talking about.
Well, in terms of putting gender identity in the Sex Discrimination Act, I don't believe that they couldn't see the unintended consequences, because they're right there. You don't have to think for much. The first thing that your brain should go to is, male rapists can go into women's prisons as males, because if that male rapist says he's a woman, then you've got to put him in a woman's prison.
Yeah, and so you're right. I'm being too kind. You don't actually have to be that bright to work it out.
They literally did not look, because the unintended consequences prove it shouldn't be there. Like, I'm all for if there needs to be in law, if they were to establish there really needs to be gender identity discrimination in law, it needs to be in a general anti-discrimination act, because it is in complete conflict with sex. That's essentially what it is, because sex is male or female. It's a gender identity is going to be the opposite of that. Otherwise, why are you trans? So you then create this conflict. So they've literally put something in there that makes everything just go like this. And most of us didn't know about it. I mean, I didn't know about it, and still most people don't, and I'm sitting here trying to tell everyone now, no, they've basically rendered this piece of legislation either meaningless or so muddled you can't do anything. And so we can't go forward with anything at the moment, because basically under the Sex Discrimination Act, they want to say that men are also women.
So you're stuck.
What's the point of the act?
So it's really you versus the Act, and the Human Rights Commission is now driving their thing. So how did we get to this point, just very quickly for people who probably didn't see your interview with Fred maybe, or because Sal's been on Fred Paul's show and a couple of other shows around town. A lot of people do know the story, but just for those who don't. So you got attacked by this group, but there's one person who's the test case person, I guess, and interestingly, the name is Tickle.
Tickle v. Giggle, yeah.
And so the case is Tickle v. Giggle, which you got to laugh.
I know.
You got to laugh.
You can't, you couldn't make this up.
No, you couldn't make this up.
It's so perfect.
And so Roxy Tickle, which is one of those names, tell us a little bit about Roxy and what happened.
Okay, so I did not know of this person until this sort of started, but now I've had to research and learn a lot more. So Roxanne Tickle is a man who claims to be a woman and plays sport on women's teams, and very much has sort of tried to position himself as an activist in this space. Okay, fine. We apparently had some interactions on Twitter in 2021, but I didn't know who that person was when we did. But going back and looking through everything, he knew who I was. He was like, Sall, the CEO of Giggle. We were having a nice exchange about basically trans women being able to be in female spaces. My position was no, and I blocked them on Twitter, which I do to all activists. Like I just block, and especially at that point, because back then with Twitter you could get
check if you blocked them.
But you could get banned from Twitter really quickly if you misgendered someone or said that men weren't women. So you always had to be very careful with your language. So I just got in the habit of blocking activists all the time so they couldn't report me. Anyway, so there was nothing personal here. I just blocked. So just after that tweet, so he knew my position, he knew who I was, knew my position. He went on Giggle. Now, remember this, the AI is set to 94% accuracy. He got through on that 94% accuracy. I then removed him, and I don't remember it at the time because we had thousands of men constantly trying to attack us. And this continued. We had the big first attack, but this continued all the time. And it would definitely have been me, but I don't remember removing him specifically because it was not a memorable event at the time. But I definitely know it would have been me. Because at that time I was the only one doing it. And so this person is the only person in the history of Giggle who has ever called my phone, text and called my personal phone number saying he was trying to get onto the app. I don't know how he got my number. And when that happened, I then, because I had this phone number and it said Roxy Tickle, and I looked up online and saw that this was a man claiming to be a woman. And I actually called my dad and I said, what do I do? This guy's tried to get onto Giggle. I've blocked him from Giggle. He's not on there anymore. But he's called and texted my phone, and he said, block his phone number and don't tell your mother, because my mum lives in constant fear of these activists and just my safety in general. So I did that, and
God bless parents.
Yeah. So I blocked the number. I didn't think anything of it, any more of it. It was something I blocked it out of my mind because it did scare me. That call and text scared me, of just because it's a boundaries thing of
totally.
Come on, like I am.
Phone.
It's just like this is someone who's like just in every which way showing that they don't respect my boundaries. Then so that was in October 2021. And in January 2022, I actually had COVID at the time, and I was 15 weeks pregnant.
Oh,
so
God.
I was like in the lockdown thing, and I got the email from the Australian Human Rights Commission that I had a complaint against me for gender identity discrimination. It was just sort of the joke at the time. I was like an Australian human rights complaint where I can't even interact with human beings. Like I'm in COVID. Blah, blah,
you have no rights. You're locked down. You've got COVID. You're 15 weeks pregnant, and here's a letter from your government.
Yeah, and so I read it, and it was a charge from Roxy Tickle, citing gender identity discrimination. And so
these are the good bureaucrats, Sal. These are the people who are here to help. They want to help. They work their lives to help us all. Thank you.
I read through it all, and it was just basically like, you don't accept this person as a woman, and so you've got to basically with a human rights complaint, it goes to conciliation. They don't have any legal power in anything as such. You're supposed to just go to essentially like a mediation, see if you can resolve it, and if you can't, then it goes to the courts. Now, just through the back and forth a bit, because I got a lawyer straight away, it was that what they wanted to settle it was that I would let him on, all men who claim to be women on the platform. I would go to sex and gender education classes, which could only be re-education.
You need them.
I could teach them.
You really do. I think that's important.
I actually wish I'd gone because I want to know what they'll say.
So this is Chinese style thought police stuff.
No, totally.
And I had the camp with you.
I also had to apologize. Oh, and then I also had to moderate.
Do these people not hear themselves?
Seriously. And then I had to moderate the speech of women on the app, so that they wouldn't offend these men who claim to be women who would push their way through.
We've all got time for that.
Yeah.
And so that's economically viable for a startup.
Yes. And so I said no, and I was like, I'm not even going to go to conciliation on that because I knew I'm not going to agree to any of it.
No.
And also, I was pregnant, and so I was like, I am not going and putting myself in that.
I'm busy being an actual woman.
Well, that's what was crazy in this is that. So I was having this gender identity discrimination claims, man saying he's a woman, and all lived experience, blah blah blah, and I'm literally going
living the experience.
I'm getting a scan at 20 weeks and saying you're having a girl, and I'm like, where does my lived experience?
No, you don't have a lived experience. You're heterosexual.
So so I said no to conciliation, basically on the basis that I felt very ambushed. I knew that I was not going to agree to a single thing, and then I wasn't putting myself through the stress considering the position that I was in. And so basically, because there was no conciliation, the Australian Human Rights Commission dismiss it, but advise what can happen next, which is you can file in federal court. And he did. And so then, and I'd always been very vocal throughout this whole process that if it was to go to federal court, that I would fight it all the way to the High Court if necessary. He then withdrew from federal court, saying that he was scared of the cost because, I would go to the High Court.
Because you're a rich businesswoman, you've got lots of money. I've been living on $30,000 a year for the last,
oh gosh, wouldn't that be lovely? It's just you live on literally nothing when you're doing startups. So so that was it. So it was withdrawn. I had a baby, and then in December of 2022, he refiled again on the 23rd of December, just before Christmas. I actually didn't find out about it until New Year's Eve, when The Guardian published the story that I hadn't even been served yet. I didn't know that we were going back to court. And suddenly it was the top story in The Guardian that Tickle v Giggle is back on. I was like, so I had to call my legal team straight away, and they were, within 10 minutes I had a legal team.
Good.
And it was all fine. We're like, okay, 2023 is our year. So basically, what happened there is he had to, because he was out of time, because you have 60 days from the Australian Human Rights Commission dismissing it to file in federal court. He did it on the 60th day. but then he withdrew. So he was then, by the time it came around to it, he was like 260 days out of time or something, because where they count it from. But the judge let it go through, so it's now an existing court case. And that's in part because my instruction to the legal team was, let this happen. Let's fix this once and for all. I'm not going to like go, oh no, he's out of time, let's not have this go ahead. I was like, this will just keep continuing. Like, you want to bring this case? Let's have this. Let's have the day in court. Okay. So I just was like, I'll give you what you want in that context. You want a court case? We'll have it. So he got a Grata Fund, $50,000. His lawyer.
Sorry, what's that?
It's Grata Fund is a legal fund for like legislation issues that they like. So I just sort of an activist-run thing. So yeah.
What sort of activist? Like left-wing activists?
Well, activists who think men are women.
Right.
I mean, they're on his side. So I
Grata,
don't know what they
think. It's called Grata, is it?
Grata Fund. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd not heard of it before, but that's
so
what
it's
it
lawyers
is.
that just want to volunteer their time.
They're more just a fund, but his legal team is then just a lawyer who also they do these sort of cases on pro bono. Just like.
Yeah, well,
you're fighting for the man, man,
so
literally.
Poor you. You've become the test case, right?
Yeah.
So Giggle and Tickle, this is it. We're going to get to the bottom of it in 20.
So now the hearing trial, but it's called a hearing in Australia. It will be in April next year. And then so what's happened also in that time is the Australian Human Rights Commission has intervened in the case as amicus curiae, which means friend of the court.
Friend of the court.
And thereby all but confirming my instinct that they were not on my side, that my human rights are quite inconsequential to the Australian Human Rights Commission.
So this is really, you're the test case versus the Australian Human Rights Commission, really.
The case is still Tickle v Giggle, but it is basically the government versus Giggle.
Yeah.
And it's the sex discrimination.
The government versus poor, unlucky individual.
And so,
who just happened to be there.
I'm either in the wrong place at the wrong time or the right place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. But so while the case is like, it's the Sex Discrimination Act, which is what's at stake here. But as I keep saying, what it comes down to for me, just in how I feel about it, it is either they are going to establish that I have to believe, the law says I have to believe a man is a woman, or I don't. And that's why it affects everybody else, because nobody should be forced to believe something that is so untrue and ignore what they see with their own eyes. We're not in a free society. If you have to say that man is a woman, you're not in a free society.
Well, we're not in a free society. Sorry, that's the reality.
I'm slightly more optimistic
well,
than you
I know.
are.
I'm such a pessimist.
Yeah.
I've been watching too much Peter Hitchens lately.
Oh, okay.
You seen Peter Hitchens?
Yeah, see, I was a fan of his brother. I'm not so much as a fan of his.
There's a hilarious interview between Peter Hitchens and former Australian Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson. It's a very good podcast. And John's like, Peter, you can't be so pessimistic. It's like, no, the Western world's finished. It's all finished. It's all gone down. Must have been having a particularly bad day.
But my thing is, why I'm not pessimistic is because there have been lots of really stupid and dangerous ideologies that have come along and infiltrated, whether it's a whole country. I mean, there's lots of other ones that exist in other countries now, but whether they exist in a big country and we have big wars about them, or like this, where it is sort of going in lots of different countries, there is a zeitgeist element attached to it. I firmly believe if you fight back against it, you will end it. Like, this will end because all zeitgeists do change. It's just, how is it going to change? And what can we limit the carnage in the meantime? But I firmly believe that we can actually push through this. Yeah.
I hope you're right. I'm not sure, but I hope you're right.
No,
we're certainly continuing to try. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep doing our tiny little show and fight against that giant behemoth. The ABC.
But every little bit counts. That's the thing. Yeah. It's just if everyone, we're all pieces of the puzzle, and if we can all do our bit to fight back against it, it will. So if you're sitting there thinking, like, what on earth can I do? Just don't go along with it. Just stand up.
Just turn off Q&A and watch the other side instead. Yes.
Yeah, just things like that. Or just go and if you're going like, and this really doesn't sound right to me, go and just do your research and find out. The best way for anyone to find out what's going on is for them to get there on their own, to go and do the research. That's how I did it. I was going like, these people are saying this is happening, and I'm not going to just believe them at face value. I'm going to go and investigate. And read every article I can find, watch everything I can find, and then you earn it. You get there and you go, hang on, they really are right. You can compare it to everything and establish what is the truth.
Well, Sal, good luck on the personal, business and legal front for the next little while. No doubt we'll have you back sometime to chat more. Hope you enjoyed that clip. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the media's best news and commentary without the woke. And we need your support. Please make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on X at The Other Side on X. It's all totally free to do that. But we could always do with your financial support too. So if you'd like to make a donation, click the Super Thanks button on YouTube with a little $ and thanks on it right under the video frame below. Even a $2 donation will really help us. And if you're watching on YouTube, do check out the full episode that this clip came from right here.